Hello friends. Did you know that nearly 80% of those who watch my videos aren't subscribed? If you enjoy the content, I'd truly appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. It helps a lot. Also, don't forget to leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. Your interaction not only supports the channel's growth, but also helps these stories reach more people. Thank you all for being here. By the way, where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. The emergency call came in at 3:47 a.m. on October 15, 2024, to the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit headquarters in Quantico, Virginia. Special Agent Dr. Sarah Chen had been awakened from a restless sleep by the shrill ring of her encrypted phone. What she heard on the other end would haunt her for months to come. "Agent Chen, we have a situation in Portland, Oregon," came the voice of Deputy Director Marcus Thompson. "3 bodies discovered in the past 6 hours, all bearing identical markings. The local field office is requesting immediate BAU assistance." Chen's blood ran cold. After 15 years profiling the nation's most dangerous criminals, she had developed an almost supernatural ability to detect when a case would consume her life. The way Thompson's voice trembled slightly at the word markings told her everything she needed to know. By 6:30 a.m., Chen was aboard a bureau jet heading west, accompanied by her partner, Agent Jake Rodriguez, a forensic linguist specializing in criminal communications. The case file spread across the small aircraft table painted a picture that defied conventional serial killer patterns. The first victim, Rebecca Martinez, 34, had been discovered in her downtown Portland apartment at 11:23 p.m. She was a radio station programming director for KPDX-FM. The second victim, Thomas Chen, no relation, 41, was found dead in his suburban home at 1:15 a.m. He worked as an audio engineer for a local recording studio. The third victim, Emma Thompson, 28, was discovered in her car in a Walmart parking lot at 3:20 a.m. She was a podcast producer for a popular true crime series. What connected them wasn't just their involvement in audio media, it was the precise way they had been killed. Each victim had been found wearing high-end noise-canceling headphones. Each had a small puncture wound behind their right ear, and each had their mouth sealed with a specific brand of audio tape used in professional recording studios. Most disturbing of all, each victim's body had been positioned to face a vintage radio, tuned to different frequencies. Rebecca's radio was tuned to 87.9 FM, static. Thomas's was set to 101.1 FM, a classical music station. Emma's was tuned to 105.5 FM, talk radio. The pattern was clear to Chen. The killer was escalating not just in frequency of murders, but in radio frequencies as well. Upon landing at Portland International Airport, Chen and Rodriguez were met by Special Agent Lisa Park from the Portland field office. Park, a 10-year veteran of the Bureau, had worked numerous homicide cases, but admitted she'd never encountered anything quite like this. "The killer knew exactly how to avoid our standard investigative techniques," Park explained as they drove through the rain-soaked streets of Portland. "No prints, no DNA, no witnesses. But here's the strange part. Each crime scene had ambient audio recordings playing when we arrived. Different sounds, rainfall, ocean waves, and forest sounds." Chen made a note. "Masking sounds. Our unsub is highly organized and has intimate knowledge of audio technology. He's not just killing people in the audio industry, he's making a statement about sound itself." The first crime scene visit to Rebecca Martinez's apartment revealed the killer's meticulous nature. The apartment had been cleaned professionally, but the positioning of the body and the radio suggested ritualistic behavior. Chen noticed something the local police had missed: tiny holes drilled into the apartment walls at specific intervals. "Rodriguez, look at this," Chen called her partner over. "These holes are precisely placed, about 6 inches apart, all at ear level." Rodriguez examined the holes with a magnifying glass. "They're too small for cameras, but they're perfectly sized for... He paused, his face draining of color. Microphones. Dr. Chen, I think our killer was recording the murders. The realization sent a chill through the investigative team. They were dealing with someone who didn't just kill for psychological gratification. He was documenting his work for some unknown purpose. The profile began to take shape in Chen's mind. The unsub was likely a white male, aged 30-45, with extensive knowledge of audio technology. He was highly organized, methodical, and had access to professional recording equipment. Most importantly, he was escalating rapidly. The break in the case came unexpectedly on the third day of investigation. While analyzing the ambient audio recordings found at each crime scene, Rodriguez made a startling discovery. Dr. Chen, you need to hear this, Rodriguez called out from the makeshift command center they'd established at the Portland field office. I've been running spectral analysis on the ambient recordings. There are hidden audio layers, voices embedded beneath the nature sounds. Chen rushed over as Rodriguez played back the recording from Rebecca's apartment. Beneath the gentle rainfall sounds, barely audible even with enhancement software, was a man's voice repeating a phrase. Do you hear them now? Do you hear the voices in the static? The recordings from Thomas's and Emma's crime scenes contained similar hidden messages, each more disturbing than the last. The killer wasn't just documenting his murders. He was leaving audio signatures, like a twisted calling card. Agent Park coordinated with the Portland Police Bureau to establish a task force specifically focused on individuals with professional audio backgrounds who had access to the type of equipment used in the murders. The list was extensive. Radio station employees, recording studio staff, audio engineers, podcast producers, and freelance sound technicians. Chen decided to approach the case from a different angle. Rodriguez, what if our killer isn't just targeting people in audio industries? What if there's a deeper connection? They dove into the victims' personal histories. Rebecca Martinez had recently started experiencing auditory hallucinations and had sought treatment from Dr. Michael Ravencroft, a psychiatrist specializing in audio-related psychological disorders. Thomas Chen had also been a patient of Dr. Ravencroft, seeking help for what he described as hearing voices in electronic equipment. Emma Thompson, it turned out, had been researching Dr. Ravencroft for a true crime podcast episode about unusual psychiatric cases. Dr. Michael Ravencroft had practiced psychiatry in Portland for 12 years, specializing in patients who experienced audio-related delusions and hallucinations. His patient files, obtained through federal warrant, revealed a pattern of unusual treatment methods involving audio immersion therapy. When agents arrived at Dr. Ravencroft's clinic on the morning of October 18th, they found the building empty except for a sophisticated recording studio hidden behind a false wall in the basement. The studio contained dozens of audio recordings labeled with patient names, including the 3 murder victims. Ravencroft had vanished, but he'd left behind a manifesto written in audio format, a 2-hour recording that detailed his belief that certain individuals were receivers for voices from another dimension, and that by killing them in specific ways while recording the process, he could capture these otherworldly communications. The manhunt for Dr. Michael Ravencroft mobilized every available resource. His psychiatric license had been revoked in California 10 years earlier for conducting unauthorized experiments on patients, but he'd managed to establish a new practice in Oregon using falsified credentials. Agent Chen realized that Ravencroft's escalating pattern suggested he wasn't finished. His manifesto indicated he needed 7 receivers to complete his project. With 3 victims down, 4 more people were in immediate danger. The break came when Rodriguez discovered that Ravencroft had been purchasing large quantities of specialized audio equipment from a supplier in Seattle. Surveillance footage from the supplier showed Ravencroft had been there just 2 days earlier, purchasing what appeared to be mobile recording equipment. Chen's profile suggested Ravencroft would target his next victim in a location that provided both audio isolation and symbolic significance. The team identified several potential locations: an abandoned radio station, a defunct recording studio, and the Portland Observatory, which had been converted into an audio art installation. On the evening of October 19th, surveillance teams were positioned at all three locations. At 11:47 p.m., thermal imaging detected movement inside the abandoned Cohen Tower radio station. Dr. Michael Ravencroft had chosen his next hunting ground. The tactical team, led by Agent Park, surrounded the building while Chen and Rodriguez monitored from a mobile command unit. Through surveillance equipment, they could see Ravencroft had already captured his fourth victim, a local DJ named Marcus Williams, who had been reported missing earlier that day. Ravencroft had Williams positioned in the old radio broadcast booth, sitting before vintage broadcasting equipment with noise-canceling headphones placed over his ears. The same audio tape was ready to seal his mouth, and the killer held the familiar sharp instrument that had been used to puncture the previous victims' skulls. "He's starting the ritual," Chen whispered into her radio. "Move in now, but carefully. He's highly intelligent and likely has contingency plans." The tactical breach was swift and precise. Agents entered through three separate entrances simultaneously, their movements coordinated to prevent Ravencroft from harming his captive victim. But Dr. Michael Ravencroft had one final surprise waiting. As agents breached the broadcast booth, Ravencroft activated a pre-recorded message that began playing through the building's old PA system. His voice echoed through the corridors. "You cannot stop the frequencies. The voices will continue to speak through those chosen to receive them. I am merely the instrument of their will." Agent Park tackled Ravencroft as he raised the puncturing instrument toward Marcus Williams's skull. The weapon, a modified surgical tool designed to penetrate precisely to the inner ear, clattered across the floor as Ravencroft was subdued. Marcus Williams survived, though he required extensive psychological counseling to recover from his ordeal. In his statement, he described how Ravencroft had been convinced that certain people could tune in to communications from deceased individuals, and that by killing them while they were in a specific auditory state, he could record evidence of life after death. Dr. Michael Ravencroft was charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of attempted murder. During his psychiatric evaluation, he continued to insist that his recordings contained voices from beyond the grave. Audio analysis revealed nothing more than ambient noise and the sounds of his victims' final moments. The case officially closed on December 3, 2024, when Ravencroft was convicted on all charges and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Agent Chen returned to Quantico, but she found herself unable to listen to the radio without remembering the hidden voices Rodriguez had discovered in those ambient recordings. In her final case report, Chen noted a disturbing detail that hadn't been presented during the trial. Advanced audio analysis had indeed detected anomalous voice patterns in Ravencroft's recordings. Patterns that didn't match any of the victims' voices and couldn't be explained by existing forensic science. The recordings were classified and stored in a secure FBI facility, where they remain today, never to be played again. The severed horse head appeared on the mayor's doorstep in Tucson, Arizona, at exactly 6:00 a.m. on a Tuesday morning in March 2024. But this wasn't a scene from a movie. It was the opening move in what would become the FBI's most complex interstate organized crime investigation in over a decade. Special Agent Maria Santos of the FBI's Organized Crime Task Force had been tracking the Cordova cartel's expansion into the American Southwest for 3 years. The cartel, originally based in Sonora, Mexico, had recently begun establishing sophisticated networks throughout Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. The horsehead wasn't just intimidation, it was a declaration of war. Mayor Patricia Hendricks of Tucson had been pushing for increased federal funding to combat drug trafficking along the border. The message was clear: back off, or face the consequences. But what the Cordova cartel didn't anticipate was that their dramatic gesture would trigger a massive federal response that would eventually span 14 states and involve over 200 federal agents. Agent Santos received the call at 6:47 a.m. from the Tucson field office. "Maria, we need you down here immediately. This horsehead situation just became a lot more complicated." The voice belonged to Special Agent David Kim, Santos's longtime partner in the organized crime task force. Kim had been working undercover with a motorcycle gang that the FBI suspected was laundering money for the Cordova cartel. His cover identity as Danny Kane, a demolitions expert with a criminal background, had taken 2 years to establish. When Santos arrived at the crime scene, she found something that chilled her to the bone. Carved into the horse's forehead was a symbol she'd seen before, a stylized scorpion holding a rose in its claws. It was the signature of Gabriel Cordova, the cartel's enforcer and the nephew of cartel leader Eduardo Cordova. "This isn't random intimidation," Santos told the assembled task force. "Gabriel Cordova is in the United States, and he's here for a specific purpose." Gabriel Cordova, age 32, had been educated at Stanford University before returning to Mexico to join his uncle's organization. Unlike typical cartel enforcers, Gabriel was sophisticated, multilingual, and had connections throughout American law enforcement and political circles. The FBI had been tracking his movements for months, but he seemed to vanish and reappear like a ghost. The investigation took a darker turn when Agent Kim reported from his undercover position that the motorcycle gang, the Desert Wolves MC, had been hired for a job that would take place in exactly 72 hours. The job involved moving packages from Arizona through New Mexico and into Texas, with the final destination being a warehouse in Houston. Santos coordinated with field offices in Phoenix, Albuquerque, El Paso, and Houston to establish surveillance along the projected route. What they discovered was that the Cordova cartel wasn't just moving drugs. They were transporting something far more valuable and dangerous. The break in the case came from an unexpected source. Dr. James Morrison, a chemical engineer for a pharmaceutical company in Phoenix, walked into the FBI field office on Thursday morning with a story that changed everything. "They approached me 6 months ago," Dr. Morrison told Santos during his debriefing. "They said they needed someone to help them synthesize a new compound. I thought it was for legitimate pharmaceutical research, but when they showed me the formula..." Dr. Morrison's voice trailed off as he slid a piece of paper across the table. The chemical formula detailed the production of a synthetic drug that was 50 times more potent than fentanyl and completely undetectable by standard drug screening tests. "Agent Santos, this compound doesn't just get people high, it can be weaponized. In the right concentration, it could contaminate a city's water supply and affect hundreds of thousands of people." The realization hit Santos like a physical blow. The Cordova cartel wasn't just expanding their drug operation. They were developing a chemical weapon that could be used for terrorism, mass murder, or the ultimate form of intimidation, the ability to poison entire communities. Agent Kim's next undercover report confirmed Santos's worst fears. The Desert Wolves MC had been hired to transport not drugs, but laboratory equipment and chemical precursors. The final destination wasn't a warehouse for distribution. It was a mobile laboratory capable of producing industrial quantities of the synthetic compound. Santos immediately elevated the case to the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force and requested assistance from the DEA, ATF, and Department of Homeland Security. What had started as an organized crime investigation had become a matter of national security. The mobile laboratory was housed in a series of modified tractor trailers that could produce, package, and distribute the synthetic compound while in transit. The convoy would move through sparsely populated areas of the Southwest, making it nearly impossible to track using traditional surveillance methods. Gabriel Cordova had designed the operation with military precision. Each trailer was equipped with chemical sensors that could detect law enforcement surveillance aircraft. The convoy followed back roads and changed routes constantly, making interception nearly impossible. Agent Kim's position within the Desert Wolves MC provided the task force with real-time intelligence, but maintaining his cover became increasingly dangerous. During a meeting at the gang's clubhouse in Phoenix, Kim witnessed Gabriel Cordova execute a gang member who had been suspected of being an informant. "He didn't just kill him," Kim reported during a secure communication with Santos. "He injected him with a small amount of the compound. The guy died in agony, and Cordova seemed to enjoy watching the effects. Maria, this isn't just about money or territory anymore. This guy is a sadist who's planning something catastrophic." The task force identified 3 potential targets for the Cordova cartel's chemical weapon: the water treatment facility serving downtown Phoenix, the reservoir system for Albuquerque, and the main water pumping station for Houston. Each location could affect hundreds of thousands of people if the synthetic compound were introduced in sufficient quantities. On Friday evening, Agent Kim reported that the convoy would begin moving on Saturday morning. The Desert Wolves MC would provide escort services and security for the mobile laboratory as it traveled from Phoenix to Houston over a 3-day period. Santos coordinated with tactical teams from multiple field offices to establish interception points along the projected route. The challenge was that the convoy couldn't simply be stopped. The mobile laboratory contained enough chemical precursors to create a toxic cloud that could contaminate everything within a 50-mile radius if improperly handled. The first interception attempt was planned for a remote stretch of highway between Phoenix and Flagstaff, Arizona. Specialized hazmat teams from the CDC and FBI's Hazardous Materials Response Unit were positioned to safely secure the chemical materials. But Gabriel Cordova had anticipated federal intervention. When the convoy approached the interception point, it suddenly split into 3 separate groups, each heading in different directions. Agent Kim was with the group heading toward New Mexico, but he had no way to communicate which group contained the actual laboratory. Santos made a command decision that would define her career. Rather than spreading resources thin by pursuing all 3 groups, she focused the majority of her team on the convoy heading toward Albuquerque, based on intelligence suggesting that the New Mexico water system was the most vulnerable target. The chase through the painted desert of northern Arizona became a high-speed nightmare. The convoy, consisting of 2 tractor-trailers and 6 motorcycle escorts, maintained speeds over 90 miles per hour, while agents in pursuit vehicles coordinated with helicopters to maintain visual contact. Agent Kim, riding with the Desert Wolves MC escorts, managed to signal to the helicopters that his group contained the mobile laboratory. But his cover was blown when Gabriel Cordova noticed Kim making hand signals to the aircraft above. "You're FBI," Cordova said to Kim during a brief stop near the Arizona-New Mexico border. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. "I've suspected for weeks, but you've been useful, so I let you stay close." Kim's years of undercover training kicked in. "You're wrong, man. I've been loyal to the club since day 1. Gabriel Cordova smiled and pulled out a satellite phone. "Let's test that loyalty." He dialed a number and put the phone on speaker. "Agent Santos? I believe you're missing someone?" Santos's voice crackled through the phone. "Gabriel Cordova, you're surrounded. Release Agent Kim and surrender the chemical materials, and we can discuss terms." Cordova laughed. "Agent Santos, I have a counter-proposal. You have 15 minutes to call off all federal agents and aircraft, or I'm going to inject your Agent Kim with my special compound and let you listen to him die." The next 15 minutes were the longest of Agent Santos's career. FBI negotiators attempted to establish dialogue with Cordova while tactical teams moved into position around the convoy's location. Hazmat specialists calculated wind patterns and evacuation zones in case the chemical materials were released. Agent Kim knew that his best chance of survival was to create an opportunity for the tactical teams to move in safely. During a moment when Cordova was distracted, Kim activated a hidden emergency transmitter that would signal his exact location to the FBI helicopters. The signal also triggered a pre-planned response from the tactical teams. Snipers positioned on elevated terrain had clear shots at Gabriel Cordova, while hazmat teams prepared to immediately secure the mobile laboratory. But Cordova had one final surprise. As federal agents closed in, he activated a dead man's switch connected to the laboratory's chemical mixing system. If Cordova's heart stopped beating, or if the switch was released, the entire contents of the mobile laboratory would be dispersed into the atmosphere. "Agent Santos," Cordova spoke into his satellite phone. "I hope you understand chess. This is what we call checkmate." The standoff lasted 6 hours. FBI negotiators worked frantically to convince Cordova to deactivate the dead man's switch while chemical engineers calculated the potential casualty radius if the compound were released. The resolution came from an unexpected source. Dr. James Morrison, the chemical engineer who had first alerted the FBI to the synthetic compound, had been working with Bureau scientists to develop a neutralizing agent. A specially modified aircraft was able to spray the neutralizing agent over the entire area, rendering Cordova's chemical weapon harmless. With his primary weapon neutralized, Gabriel Cordova found himself surrounded by federal agents with nowhere to run. Agent Kim, who had been held at gunpoint for over 6 hours, was able to overpower one of the gang members and create enough chaos for the tactical teams to move in safely. Gabriel Cordova was arrested along with 14 members of the Desert Wolves MC and 6 other Cordova cartel associates. The mobile laboratory contained enough chemical precursors to produce approximately 500 pounds of the synthetic compound, enough to contaminate the water supply for a city of 2 million people. During his interrogation, Gabriel Cordova revealed that the chemical weapon was intended as a demonstration of the cartel's capabilities. The plan was to contaminate a small town's water supply, then demand massive payments from major cities to avoid similar attacks. "We weren't planning to kill millions of people," Cordova told Agent Santos during one of his interviews. "We just wanted to show that we could. Fear is more valuable than drugs, Agent Santos. Fear doesn't require supply chains or distribution networks. Fear spreads by itself." The case officially closed 8 months later when all involved parties were convicted on federal terrorism and organized crime charges. Gabriel Cordova received life in prison without parole, while his associates received sentences ranging from 25 to 50 years. Agent Kim returned to active duty after 3 months of psychological counseling, but he requested transfer to white-collar crime investigations. "I can't do undercover work anymore," he told Santos. "When someone holds a chemical weapon to your head for 6 hours, it changes you." The Cordova cartel's operations in the United States were effectively eliminated, but Agent Santos knew that other organizations were watching, learning, and adapting. The synthetic compound formula was classified at the highest levels of government, but the knowledge of its existence couldn't be erased. In her final case report, Santos noted a troubling trend. Organized crime groups were increasingly seeking to acquire weapons of mass destruction not for immediate use, but as ultimate insurance policies against law enforcement action. The horsehead that had started it all was eventually traced to a ranch outside Phoenix that the cartel had been using as a meeting location. Inside the ranch house, agents found detailed maps of water treatment facilities throughout the Southwest and a manifesto written by Gabriel Cordova, describing his vision of a future where criminal organizations could hold entire cities hostage through the threat of mass poisoning. The case file remains classified, but the incident led to significant upgrades in water system security throughout the United States and the development of new protocols for detecting and neutralizing chemical weapons in the hands of non-state actors. The phone call that would shatter the Federal Witness Protection Program's 50-year safety record came at 2:17 a.m. on a frigid January morning in 2024. U.S. Marshal Sarah Brennan answered her encrypted cell phone to hear the voice of Deputy Director Janet Walsh from the FBI's Witness Security Division. Sarah, we have a code red situation. 3 protected witnesses have been found dead in the past 8 hours. All were in different safe locations, all had new identities, and all were killed using methods that match their original threat profiles. Marshall Brennan's blood turned to ice. In her 15 years managing high-risk witness relocations, she had never heard of a single protected witness being discovered and killed, let alone 3 in one night. The implications were staggering. Someone with access to the most classified information in federal law enforcement was systematically hunting down protected witnesses. The 3 victims had been living under assumed identities in separate states for different lengths of time. Marcus Williams, originally from Detroit, had been in protection for 6 years after testifying against a human trafficking ring. He was found dead in his apartment in Bozeman, Montana, strangled with piano wire, the signature method of the trafficking organization's enforcer. Jennifer Collins, formerly of Miami, had been relocated 4 years ago after providing evidence against a money laundering operation run by Cuban-American organized crime. She was discovered in her home in Bangor, Maine, killed by a single gunshot to the head with a .22 caliber pistol, the preferred execution method of the organization she had testified against. The 3rd victim, David Park, had been the star witness in a major racketeering case against a Korean-American gang in Los Angeles. He'd been in protection for only 2 years and was found dead in his car in Cheyenne, Wyoming, beaten to death with metal pipes, exactly how the gang typically killed informants. Marshall Brennan dressed quickly and drove through empty Washington, D.C. streets to the U.S. Marshals Service headquarters. The secure conference room was already filled with representatives from the FBI, DOJ, and the Witness Security Division. The atmosphere was one of barely controlled panic. "Ladies and gentlemen," Deputy Director Walsh began, "we are facing the worst security breach in the history of federal witness protection. Someone with high-level access to WITSEC files is providing location and identity information to the very criminals our witnesses testified against." The revelation sent shockwaves through the room. The Witness Security Program, administered jointly by the U.S. Marshals Service and the FBI, had relocated over 19,000 witnesses and family members since 1971. The program's perfect safety record was its most valuable asset. Witnesses would only cooperate if they believed the government could truly protect them. FBI Special Agent Thomas Crawford, a 20-year veteran of internal security investigations, was assigned to lead the mole hunt. Crawford had investigated corruption cases throughout federal law enforcement, but never one with such devastating implications. "We're looking for someone with access to the WITSEC database, knowledge of witness relocation procedures, and detailed information about the criminal organizations these witnesses testified against," Crawford explained to the assembled task force. "That significantly narrows our suspect pool." The WITSEC database was protected by multiple layers of security, and access was restricted to fewer than 200 federal employees. Each access was logged, time-stamped, and required multiple authentication factors. Theoretically, it should have been impossible to breach without leaving a trail. Agent Crawford's first step was to examine the database access logs for the weeks leading up to the murders. What he discovered was deeply troubling. All 3 victims' files had been accessed by legitimate users conducting routine security checks. The breach wasn't coming from outside hackers. It was coming from within the system itself. The investigation focused on 12 individuals who had legitimate access to all 3 victims' files: 4 FBI agents, 3 U.S. Marshals, 2 DOJ prosecutors, 2 administrative personnel, and 1 computer systems analyst. All had undergone extensive background checks and regular polygraph examinations. Marshal Brennan worked with Agent Crawford to establish a timeline of events. The file accesses had occurred over a 3-month period, with someone carefully reviewing not just the witnesses' current locations and identities, but also their original case files and threat assessments. Whoever did this wasn't just selling information. Brennan observed during one of their briefings. They were conducting operational planning. They knew exactly which criminal organizations to contact and how those organizations typically carried out executions. The psychological profile developed by FBI behavioral analysts suggested they were looking for someone under significant financial pressure, possibly with gambling debts or other personal crises. The mole would also need to have established relationships with organized crime figures, not necessarily as a criminal, but perhaps as a prosecutor or agent who had worked those cases. The break in the investigation came from an unexpected source. Jennifer Collins, the witness killed in Maine, had been corresponding with her sister in Florida using a secure email system provided by the Marshals Service. The sister reported that Jennifer had mentioned being concerned about a federal employee who had been asking unusual questions about her case. She said someone from the government had called her about a month ago, the sister told Agent Crawford during a phone interview. They claimed they were doing a routine security check, but they asked specific questions about her original testimony that seemed strange. The phone records showed that the call had come from a number registered to the Department of Justice, but when Crawford traced the specific line, he discovered it belonged to Assistant U.S. Attorney Rachel Morrison, one of the prosecutors on their suspect list. Rachel Morrison, age 42, had been a federal prosecutor for 18 years and had worked on hundreds of organized crime cases. Her career had been exemplary, with numerous commendations for her work prosecuting racketeering and witness intimidation cases. She was also drowning in debt. A financial investigation revealed that Morrison had been struggling with a gambling addiction for over 5 years. She owed approximately $340,000 to various creditors, including some with suspected organized crime connections. Her ex-husband had left her, taking their children, and she had been living in a studio apartment in one of D.C.'s less desirable neighborhoods. Agent Crawford obtained a warrant to monitor Morrison's communications and discovered that she had been in contact with known associates of all 3 criminal organizations whose former witnesses had been killed. The conversations were coded, but the pattern was clear. Morrison was providing information in exchange for money and debt forgiveness. The surveillance revealed that Morrison's next target was a witness named Robert Chen, who had testified against a Chinese-American organized crime group in San Francisco. Chen had been relocated to a small town in North Dakota under the identity Robert Carter, where he worked as an accountant for a local farming cooperative. Morrison had accessed Chen's file just 2 days earlier, and phone intercepts revealed she was planning to provide his location to a hitman known as the Tailor, who specialized in making murders look like accidents or natural deaths. Agent Crawford faced a difficult decision: arrest Morrison immediately and potentially save Robert Chen's life, or continue surveillance to gather more evidence and potentially identify other compromised witnesses. The risk was enormous. If Chen was killed while under surveillance, the FBI would bear responsibility for his death. The decision was made to mount an immediate operation to protect Robert Chen while simultaneously arresting Rachel Morrison. Teams were dispatched to North Dakota to provide covert protection for Chen, while Crawford prepared to arrest Morrison at her D.C. apartment. But Morrison had become aware that she was under investigation. When agents arrived at her apartment on the morning of January 15th, they found it empty except for a suicide note that detailed her crimes and expressed remorse for the witnesses who had died because of her actions. "I never intended for anyone to die," the note read. "I was just trying to pay off my debts and get my life back. But once it started, they wouldn't let me stop. They said if I didn't continue providing information, they would kill me and my children." Morrison had vanished, but not before accessing the WITSEC database one final time. She had downloaded the files of 17 additional protected witnesses, creating a potential catastrophe that could destroy the entire witness protection program. The manhunt for Rachel Morrison involved every federal law enforcement agency. Her photo was distributed to airports, border crossings, and law enforcement agencies nationwide. But Morrison had learned well from her years prosecuting fugitives. She knew how to disappear. The task force worked frantically to identify the 17 witnesses whose files Morrison had accessed and relocate them to new safe houses. It was a massive operation that involved coordinating with field offices across the country and required the cooperation of local law enforcement agencies to provide temporary protection. Agent Crawford discovered that Morrison had been in contact with criminal organizations in 8 different states. The scope of her betrayal was far greater than initially suspected. She hadn't just sold information about individual witnesses, but had also provided details about WITSEC operational procedures, safe house locations, and security protocols. 3 days into the manhunt, Morrison's body was found in a motel room in Baltimore, Maryland. She had died from an apparent drug overdose, but the medical examiner determined that the drugs had been forcibly injected. Rachel Morrison had been murdered by the very criminals she had been working with. They killed her because she had become a liability, Agent Crawford explained to Marshal Brennan. Once we started closing in, she was more dangerous to them alive than dead. Morrison's death ended the immediate threat, but the damage to the witness protection program was severe. Congressional hearings were called to investigate how such a massive security breach could have occurred, and major reforms were implemented to prevent similar incidents. The 17 witnesses whose files Morrison had compromised were all successfully relocated, but the psychological impact was enormous. Many witnesses in the program began to question whether the government could truly protect them, and several demanded to be released from protection despite the risks. Robert Chen, the witness who had been Morrison's final target, was moved to a new location where he continues to live under federal protection. During his debriefing, he revealed that he had noticed unusual surveillance activity around his home in the weeks before Morrison's arrest. I kept seeing the same car parked across from the farm cooperative, Chen told investigators. The driver would sit there for hours, just watching. I reported it to my local marshal contact, but they said it was probably nothing. The investigation revealed that the tailor had indeed been in North Dakota, conducting surveillance on Robert Chen in preparation for his assassination. The hitman was arrested 2 weeks later in Denver and charged with conspiracy to commit murder. During his interrogation, the tailor revealed details about Rachel Morrison's criminal network that stunned federal investigators. Morrison had been working with organized crime figures for over 2 years, providing information about not just protected witnesses, but also ongoing federal investigations, grand jury proceedings, and planned law enforcement operations. She was their inside person, the tailor told Agent Crawford. They didn't just use her for witness locations. She told them which prosecutors were getting close to indictments, which agents were working undercover operations, which informants were cooperating with the feds. The full scope of Morrison's betrayal may never be known. Her actions compromised dozens of federal investigations and potentially led to the deaths of other informants and witnesses whose cases were never directly connected to her activities. Agent Crawford's final report on the Morrison case recommended sweeping changes to the Witness Protection Program's security protocols. The most significant change was the implementation of a need-to-know system that would prevent any single individual from accessing complete witness files. The 3 murdered witnesses, Marcus Williams, Jennifer Collins, and David Park, had trusted the federal government to protect them in exchange for their courage in testifying against dangerous criminals. Their deaths served as a stark reminder that the greatest threats to witness security sometimes come from within the very system designed to protect them. 6 months after Morrison's death, her ex-husband came forward with information that added another layer of tragedy to the case. Morrison had been receiving death threats for months before she began cooperating with criminal organizations. The threats weren't directed at her, but at her children. She told me that men had approached her outside our kids' school, the ex-husband revealed. They knew where we lived, where the kids went to school, what time I picked them up. Rachel was trying to protect our family the only way she knew how. The revelation that Morrison had been coerced rather than simply motivated by greed changed how federal investigators viewed the case. It also led to enhanced security protocols for federal prosecutors and their families, recognizing that threats against loved ones could compromise even the most dedicated public servants. The Morrison case remains classified, but it fundamentally changed how the federal government protects its most valuable assets: the brave individuals who risk everything to testify against organized crime. The perfect safety record of the Witness Protection Program had been shattered, but from its ruins emerged a stronger, more secure system designed to prevent such tragedies from ever happening again. The first indication that something was terribly wrong came through an encrypted message that appeared simultaneously on the smartphones of 12 FBI cybercrime specialists across the country at exactly 3:33 a.m. on a Thursday morning in September 2024. The message was simple but chilling. "I know where you sleep." Special Agent Rebecca Torres of the FBI's Cyber Division in San Francisco was jolted awake by her phone's emergency alert tone. As she read the message, her years of experience investigating digital crimes told her this wasn't a random prank. Someone with sophisticated technical capabilities had penetrated the Bureau's most secure communication systems and was targeting the agents responsible for hunting cyber criminals. Agent Torres immediately contacted the FBI's Cyber Incident Response Team, but what she learned made her blood run cold. The intrusion wasn't limited to text messages. The unknown perpetrator had accessed personnel files, home addresses, family information, and even real-time GPS locations of the targeted agents. Within 6 hours, a task force was assembled at the FBI's Cyber Division headquarters in Washington, D.C. The team included digital forensic experts, behavioral analysts, and counterintelligence specialists. Leading the investigation was Special Agent Dr. Michael Chen, a former NSA cryptologist who had been tracking sophisticated cyber threats for over a decade. "This isn't just a security breach," Dr. Chen explained to the assembled team. "This is a declaration of war against federal law enforcement. Our perpetrator isn't just demonstrating technical capability, they're sending a psychological message." The analysis of the intrusion revealed disturbing details. The attacker had been inside FBI systems for at least 6 months, carefully mapping network architecture and identifying high-value targets. Most alarming was the discovery that the perpetrator had accessed files related to ongoing investigations into child exploitation networks. Agent Torres, who specialized in crimes against children, recognized the implications immediately. If someone is targeting agents who investigate child exploitation, they're either trying to protect their own criminal activities or they're planning something that specifically involves harming children. The digital forensic investigation revealed that the attacker was using a sophisticated botnet, a network of compromised computers, to mask their true location and identity. The botnet included systems from universities, corporations, and government agencies across 14 countries, making traditional tracking methods nearly impossible. Dr. Chen's team discovered that the perpetrator was using a combination of advanced, persistent threat techniques typically associated with nation-state actors, but the targeting pattern suggested a more personal motivation. The attacked agents weren't random. They had all worked on cases involving a specific type of cybercrime, the use of artificial intelligence to create and distribute child exploitation material. The breakthrough came when digital forensic specialist Agent Lisa Park noticed an anomaly in the attacker's code. Hidden within the malware was a digital signature that had appeared in evidence from a case Agent Torres had worked 3 years earlier. "I remember this," Torres told the task force. "We arrested a computer programmer named Marcus Delacroix in 2021. He was developing AI software that could generate photorealistic images of children for exploitation material. We thought we had shut down his operation completely." Marcus Delacroix, age 35, had been a brilliant computer scientist with a PhD from MIT and expertise in machine learning and artificial intelligence. He had been sentenced to 15 years in federal prison for creating and distributing software that enabled the creation of synthetic child exploitation material. But according to Bureau of Prisons records, Delacroix had died in his cell 8 months earlier from an apparent suicide. "That's impossible," Dr. Chen said after reviewing the death certificate. "The digital fingerprints in this attack are too sophisticated and too current to have been created by someone who died 8 months ago." The investigation took a shocking turn when Agent Park conducted a deeper analysis of the prison surveillance footage from the day Delacroix allegedly died. Using advanced facial recognition software, she discovered that the person who died in the cell wasn't Marcus Delacroix. It was another inmate who had been coerced or murdered to take his place. "We're not just dealing with a cyber attack," Agent Torres realized. "We're dealing with someone who faked his own death, escaped from federal prison, and has been planning revenge against the agents who put him there." The revelation that Delacroix was alive and free created an urgent threat assessment. His original case files revealed that he had made specific threats against Agent Torres and her family during his trial. More disturbing was the discovery that he had been gathering intelligence on the personal lives of federal agents for months before revealing his presence. Dr. Chen's analysis of Delacroix's current capabilities was terrifying. In the 3 years since his arrest, artificial intelligence technology had advanced exponentially. What had once required massive computing resources could now be accomplished on a high-end personal computer. "He's not just creating synthetic child exploitation material anymore," Dr. Chen explained to the task force. "He's using AI to create deep-fake videos of our agents' children. He's turning our own families into targets." The investigation revealed that Delacroix had been using social media, school records, and public surveillance cameras to gather images and videos of federal agents' family members. He was then using advanced AI software to create convincing fake videos that appeared to show the children in compromising situations. Agent Torres felt physically sick when she realized the implications. He's planning to blackmail federal agents by threatening to release fake videos of their children. Even if the videos are proven to be artificial, the damage to the families would be devastating. The task force worked frantically to trace Delacroix's current location. Analysis of the botnet revealed that he was operating from a sophisticated mobile command center, possibly housed in a modified recreational vehicle that moved constantly to avoid detection. The psychological profile developed by FBI behavioral analysts suggested that Delacroix's motivation had evolved beyond simple revenge. His original crimes had been motivated by profit and sexual deviance, but his current activities showed signs of a grandiose delusion that he was waging war against the entire federal law enforcement system. Agent Park made a crucial discovery while analyzing the metadata from Delacroix's communications. Hidden within the code were timestamps that revealed his real-time location during the transmission of his messages. He had been careless for just a few seconds, but it was enough. "He's in Colorado," Park announced to the task force. "The timestamp analysis shows he was in the Denver metropolitan area when he sent the last message. But he's mobile, so he could be anywhere within a 500-mile radius by now." The manhunt for Marcus Delacroix involved coordination between the FBI's Cyber Division, the U.S. Marshals Service, and state law enforcement agencies throughout the Rocky Mountain region. Aviation units used thermal imaging to search for vehicles with unusual electronic signatures that might indicate mobile computing operations. The break in the case came from an unexpected source. A park ranger at Rocky Mountain National Park reported that campers had been complaining about unusual interference with their electronic devices in a specific area of the park. The interference pattern suggested the presence of powerful transmitting equipment nearby. FBI surveillance teams converged on the area and discovered a sophisticated mobile laboratory hidden in what appeared to be a luxury camping trailer. The trailer was equipped with satellite communication systems, high-end computing equipment, and multiple backup power sources. But when agents approached the trailer, they discovered that Delacroix had been monitoring their communications and had fled just hours earlier. Inside the trailer, they found evidence of his most disturbing project yet: detailed plans to hack into school security systems and use AI-generated voices to make fake emergency announcements that would cause mass panic. Dr. Chen realized that Delacroix's plan was far more sophisticated than simple revenge. He's trying to destroy public confidence in digital communication systems. If people can't trust that emergency announcements are real, if they can't believe their own eyes when they see video evidence, society starts to break down. The discovery in the trailer also revealed that Delacroix had been in communication with other individuals involved in cybercrime networks. He wasn't working alone. He was part of a larger conspiracy to use artificial intelligence as a weapon against law enforcement and government institutions. Agent Torres led a team that worked around the clock to identify Delacroix's associates and potential targets. The investigation revealed a network of individuals with expertise in AI, computer programming, and digital manipulation who were coordinating attacks against various government agencies. The final confrontation came in an abandoned technology park outside Denver, where Delacroix had established a temporary base of operations. FBI tactical teams surrounded the building while cyber specialists worked to prevent him from transmitting any final malicious code. When agents breached the building, they found Delacroix in a room filled with dozens of computer monitors displaying real-time surveillance feeds from schools, government buildings, and law enforcement facilities across the country. He had been planning a coordinated cyber attack that would have caused chaos throughout the United States. "You can't stop what's already begun," Delacroix told Agent Torres as he was arrested. "I've created something that will outlive me. Every time someone questions whether a video is real, every time someone doubts what they see with their own eyes, I win." Marcus Delacroix was charged with cyber terrorism, identity theft, child exploitation, and escape from federal custody. During his interrogation, he revealed that his network had been planning to release thousands of deep-fake videos designed to discredit public officials, judges, and law enforcement officers. The technology Delacroix had developed was more advanced than anything the FBI had previously encountered. His AI software could create convincing fake audio and video in real time, making it possible to manufacture evidence or create false emergency situations with devastating consequences. Agent Torres testified at Delacroix's sentencing hearing about the psychological impact of his crimes on federal agents and their families. "He didn't just threaten our lives," she told the court. "He threatened to destroy the trust that our children have in their own safety and security." Marcus Delacroix was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, with additional provisions that he would be held in a facility with no access to computer technology. But the damage he had caused extended far beyond his individual crimes. The case led to significant changes in how the FBI approaches cybercrime investigations involving artificial intelligence. New protocols were established for protecting the identities and personal information of federal agents, and specialized units were created to combat the emerging threat of AI-powered disinformation campaigns. Dr. Chen's final report on the Delacroix case identified artificial intelligence as the most significant emerging threat to law enforcement in the digital age. "We're entering an era where reality itself can be fabricated," he wrote. "Our ability to trust our own senses is under attack." The technology Delacroix created was eventually analyzed and reverse-engineered by FBI experts, leading to the development of new detection methods for identifying artificially generated content. But the knowledge that such technology exists has forever changed how digital evidence is evaluated in criminal cases. 6 months after Delacroix's conviction, Agent Torres received a message on her personal phone. His legacy lives on. The message was traced to a server in Eastern Europe, suggesting that Delacroix's network was still active and continuing his work. The investigation into Marcus Delacroix officially closed with his conviction, but the FBI continues to monitor for signs that his associates are carrying on his mission to weaponize artificial intelligence against law enforcement and society at large. In her final case notes, Agent Torres wrote, "Marcus Delacroix didn't just commit crimes using technology. He turned technology itself into a weapon. The line between reality and fabrication may never be as clear as it once was." The package that arrived at the FBI's Counterterrorism Division on a Monday morning in November 2024 contained a single USB drive and a handwritten note. "They are among us, and they have been waiting for 20 years." What followed would become the most complex domestic terrorism investigation in the Bureau's history. Special Agent David Martinez, a 15-year veteran of counterterrorism operations, was assigned to analyze the contents of the USB drive. The device contained thousands of encrypted files, surveillance photos, and detailed records of what appeared to be a long-term terrorist sleeper cell operating within the United States. The anonymous source had documented members of the cell living normal lives as teachers, engineers, small business owners, and even local government employees across 7 different states. But the most chilling revelation was that according to the files, the cell had been dormant for 2 decades, waiting for an activation signal that was scheduled to arrive on December 15th, 2024, just 5 weeks away. Agent Martinez immediately briefed FBI Director Sarah Collins on the contents of the USB drive. Within hours, a joint task force was assembled involving the FBI's Counterterrorism Division, the CIA's Domestic Resources Division, and representatives from the Department of Homeland Security. "If this intelligence is accurate," Director Collins told the assembled task force, "we're facing a terrorist cell that has been embedded in American society since 2004. These individuals have built lives, families, and careers while maintaining their commitment to carrying out a coordinated attack." The files contained detailed dossiers on 17 suspected cell members. Each had entered the United States legally between 2002 and 2005, obtained legitimate employment, and had lived seemingly normal lives for nearly 2 decades. Most disturbing was the level of integration they had achieved. Several were married to American citizens, had children born in the United States, and held positions of trust within their communities. Agent Jennifer Park, a behavioral analyst specializing in long-term terrorist operations, studied the psychological profiles contained in the files. "This level of patient infiltration suggests state-sponsored terrorism," she told the task force. "Only a nation-state would have the resources and motivation to maintain sleeper agents for 20 years. The investigation's first priority was to verify the authenticity of the intelligence. FBI surveillance teams were quietly deployed to observe the suspected cell members, while digital forensic experts analyzed the USB drive for clues about its origin. Agent Martinez focused on the cell's apparent leader, a man named Ahmad Hassan, who had been living in Phoenix, Arizona, under the identity Andrew Harrison. According to the files, Harrison worked as a civil engineer for the city's water treatment department, a position that would provide access to critical infrastructure. Harrison had immigrated to the United States in 2003, claiming to be a refugee from Syria. He had married an American woman named Sarah Collins, no relation to the FBI director, had 2 children, and had been a model citizen for over 20 years. His neighbors described him as friendly, helpful, and completely integrated into American society. The surveillance of Harrison revealed a man living an apparently normal life. He coached his son's soccer team, attended parent-teacher conferences, and had even served on the local school board. But FBI analysts noticed subtle anomalies in his behavior that suggested he was maintaining some form of operational security. Agent Park observed that Harrison followed consistent patterns that seemed designed to avoid surveillance. He varied his routes to work, made seemingly random stops at different locations, and occasionally used cash for purchases that most people would make with credit cards. "He's not paranoid," Park told Agent Martinez. He's professionally aware. Someone trained him in counter-surveillance techniques, and he's been practicing them for 20 years. The breakthrough in the investigation came when FBI cryptographers cracked the encryption on the USB drive's most sensitive files. The documents revealed that the sleeper cell was part of a larger network with connections to foreign intelligence services, and that their planned attack was designed to coincide with a major national holiday. According to the decrypted files, the cell's mission was to simultaneously attack water treatment facilities, power substations, and communication infrastructure in 7 major cities. The goal wasn't just to cause casualties, but to create widespread panic and demonstrate the vulnerability of American infrastructure. Agent Martinez realized that traditional surveillance wouldn't be sufficient to prevent the attack. "We can't just watch them," he told the task force. "We need to understand their communication methods, their operational timeline, and how they plan to coordinate simultaneous attacks across multiple states." The FBI's technical surveillance teams discovered that the cell members were using a sophisticated communication system based on seemingly innocent social media posts and online gaming platforms. Messages were hidden using steganography, the practice of concealing information within digital images and audio files. Agent Park worked with computer specialists to decode the hidden communications and discovered that the cell had been receiving periodic instructions through this covert channel for years. The messages contained updates on American infrastructure vulnerabilities, changes to operational procedures, and most recently, confirmation that the activation signal would be transmitted on December 15th. The investigation revealed that the cell's foreign handlers had been extraordinarily patient and methodical. They had allowed the operatives to build genuine lives in America, understanding that long-term integration would make them nearly impossible to detect and would give them access to sensitive infrastructure. Ahmad Hassan's position with the Phoenix Water Treatment Department was particularly concerning. Analysis of his work records showed that he had systematically gained access to information about water treatment facilities throughout the Southwest, ostensibly for professional development purposes. "He's been conducting reconnaissance for 20 years, Agent Martinez realized. Every conference he attended, every facility he visited, every technical manual he studied, it was all intelligence gathering for this operation." The task force faced a difficult decision: arrest the cell members immediately and prevent the attack, or continue surveillance to identify the full scope of the network and potentially capture the foreign handlers directing the operation. Director Collins made the strategic decision to continue surveillance while secretly evacuating key personnel from the targeted facilities and implementing enhanced security measures. The goal was to allow the cell to believe their operation was proceeding normally while actually ensuring that their attack would fail. Agent Park's psychological analysis suggested that the cell members were likely experiencing internal conflict as the activation date approached. They had spent 20 years building American lives, raising American children, and forming genuine relationships within their communities. "Some of them may be having second thoughts," Park told the task force. 20 years is a long time to maintain ideological commitment while living in the society you're supposed to attack. The FBI's surveillance revealed signs of stress among several cell members. Phone intercepts captured conversations where operatives expressed concerns about their children's futures and questioned whether their mission was still relevant after so many years. The most significant break in the case came when Sarah Harrison, Ahmad's wife, contacted the FBI. She had discovered encrypted files on her husband's computer and had begun to suspect that his true identity wasn't what he claimed. "I've been married to him for 18 years, Sarah told Agent Martinez during a clandestine meeting. "But last week I found documents with a different name, photographs I'd never seen, and what looked like building blueprints. I think my husband might be a terrorist." Sarah's cooperation allowed the FBI to place monitoring equipment inside the Harrison home and gain access to Ahmad's private communications. What they discovered was that Ahmad Hassan had been struggling with his dual identity for years. In private communications with his handlers, Ahmad had repeatedly requested permission to abandon the mission and live peacefully with his American family. The responses made it clear that the Foreign Intelligence Service considered him and his fellow operatives to be expendable assets. "You exist to serve the cause," one intercepted message read. "Your American life is an illusion. Your American family is a tool. When the time comes, you will remember your true purpose." Agent Martinez realized that Ahmad Hassan and potentially other cell members might be willing to cooperate if they understood that their handlers viewed them as disposable. A carefully planned approach could turn some of the operatives into double agents. The FBI's behavioral specialists developed a strategy to psychologically pressure the cell members by making them aware that their handlers were monitoring their American families as potential leverage for ensuring compliance with the mission. Surveillance footage was deliberately leaked to the operatives, showing unknown individuals photographing their children at school and following their spouses. The message was clear. Their American families were also targets if they failed to carry out their assigned tasks. The psychological pressure campaign succeeded beyond expectations. 3 cell members independently contacted FBI field offices expressing willingness to cooperate in exchange for protection for their families. Ahmad Hassan was the first to fully cooperate. During his debriefing, he revealed that the cell's mission had evolved over the years, and that the December 15th attack was intended as a demonstration of capability rather than a mass casualty event. "They want to show that they can activate assets that have been dormant for decades," Hassan told Agent Martinez. "The attack is designed to be spectacular but not catastrophic. They want America to know that there could be hundreds of other sleeper cells waiting for activation." The revelation that the December 15th attack was essentially a proof-of-concept operation led to a massive intelligence effort to identify other potential sleeper cells. The FBI analyzed immigration records, employment patterns, and social networks to identify individuals who might fit similar profiles. Agent Park's analysis suggested that the Foreign Intelligence Service had likely established multiple sleeper cells over the past several decades, each with different activation timelines and target profiles. The cell they had discovered might be just one component of a much larger long-term infiltration operation. On December 10th, 5 days before the planned attack, the FBI simultaneously arrested 12 of the 17 cell members. The remaining 5 were allowed to believe the operation was still active, while actually being fed false information designed to expose their foreign handlers. Ahmad Hassan cooperated fully with federal authorities and provided detailed information about the recruitment process, training methods, and communication protocols used by the Foreign Intelligence Service. His testimony led to the identification of potential handlers operating within foreign diplomatic missions in the United States. The planned attack was completely disrupted, but the investigation revealed troubling vulnerabilities in American infrastructure security and immigration screening processes. The fact that 17 foreign operatives had lived undetected in the United States for 20 years raised serious questions about national security protocols. During the trial proceedings, several of the cooperating cell members testified about the psychological toll of maintaining double lives for 2 decades. Many described experiencing identity confusion and genuine affection for the country they had been sent to attack. "I came here to destroy America," Ahmad Hassan testified. "But America made me into an American. My children are Americans. My wife is American. At some point, this became my home, and I couldn't reconcile that with my mission." The Foreign Intelligence Service that had operated the sleeper cell was never officially identified, but intelligence analysis suggested it was likely a nation-state with sophisticated intelligence capabilities and a long-term strategic interest in demonstrating American vulnerabilities. All cooperating cell members were sentenced to lengthy prison terms, but were eligible for eventual release into witness protection programs. The non-cooperating members received life sentences for conspiracy to commit terrorism and attacks on critical infrastructure. Agent Martinez's final report on the case recommended comprehensive reviews of immigration and background check procedures, enhanced monitoring of individuals with access to critical infrastructure, and the development of new techniques for identifying long-term foreign intelligence operations. The case files remain classified, but the investigation led to significant changes in how the FBI monitors potential terrorist sleeper cells and cooperates with international intelligence services to identify foreign infiltration operations. 6 months after the arrests, Ahmad Hassan's wife, Sarah, testified before a closed congressional committee about the experience of learning that her husband had been a foreign operative. Her testimony led to new support programs for family members affected by terrorism cases. "For 20 years, I thought I knew the man I was married to," Sarah told the committee. "When I learned the truth, it felt like my entire life had been a lie. But then I realized that his love for our family was real, even if his identity wasn't." The sleeper cell case demonstrated the evolving nature of terrorism threats in the 21st century and the challenges faced by law enforcement in identifying enemies who have successfully integrated into American society over decades. In his final case summary, Agent Martinez wrote, "The greatest terrorist threat may not come from foreign enemies we can easily identify, but from those who have learned to hide in plain sight among us, waiting patiently for the moment to strike." Federal Judge Patricia Hawthorne was found dead in her chambers at the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York on a Tuesday morning in October 2024. The initial assessment by court security suggested natural causes. The 62-year-old judge had been working late on a high-profile organized crime case and appeared to have suffered a heart attack at her desk. But FBI Special Agent Rachel Santos, assigned to investigate threats against federal judges, noticed details that troubled her experienced eye. Judge Hawthorne's office had been meticulously organized, with case files arranged in perfect stacks, and her computer showing recent activity well past her usual working hours. Most suspicious was the presence of a half-eaten meal from an expensive restaurant that Judge Hawthorne was known to dislike. Agent Santos had been monitoring potential threats against Judge Hawthorne for 6 months as part of the FBI's Judicial Security Division. The judge had been presiding over the trial of Vincent "Vinny" Torino, alleged head of a major racketeering operation that controlled construction contracts throughout the Northeast. The autopsy revealed that Judge Hawthorne had indeed died of cardiac arrest, but toxicology tests detected traces of a rare compound that could induce heart failure in individuals with pre-existing conditions. What appeared to be natural death was actually sophisticated murder, and Agent Santos suspected it was connected to the Torino trial. Judge Hawthorne had been known for her unwavering integrity during her 15 years on the federal bench. She had presided over numerous high-profile corruption cases and had developed a reputation for being completely incorruptible. But Agent Santos's investigation would reveal that even the most ethical judges could become targets when billions of dollars were at stake. The breakthrough came when Agent Santos examined Judge Hawthorne's financial records and discovered a series of unusual transactions in the weeks before her death. Someone had deposited and then immediately withdrawn large sums of money from an account in the judge's name, transactions that the judge herself had never authorized. FBI Financial Crimes Specialist Agent Michael Chen analyzed the banking records and discovered that someone had been using Judge Hawthorne's identity to open multiple accounts at different banks. The accounts had been used to receive payments from offshore companies with connections to organized crime. Someone was setting up Judge Hawthorne to look corrupt, Agent Chen told Santos. They created a false paper trail showing her receiving bribes, then killed her before she could discover the scheme and clear her name. The investigation revealed a conspiracy far more complex than simple judicial murder. The Torino organization had been planning to frame Judge Hawthorne for corruption, use that evidence to force a mistrial, and ensure that any subsequent proceedings would be tainted by questions about judicial integrity. Agent Santos discovered that the plot involved corrupt employees within multiple banks who had been paid to create false documentation showing Judge Hawthorne's involvement in money laundering activities. The scheme was so sophisticated that it would have been nearly impossible for the judge to prove her innocence if she had lived. The investigation's focus shifted to identifying who within the federal court system had provided inside information necessary to carry out such an elaborate frame-up. Someone with access to Judge Hawthorne's personal information, court schedule, and security arrangements had been feeding intelligence to the Torino organization. FBI Internal Affairs Agent Lisa Park was assigned to investigate potential corruption within the court system. Her analysis of court personnel records revealed that several employees had been experiencing unusual financial situations that might make them vulnerable to bribery or extortion. The first suspect was court clerk Thomas Morrison, who had access to Judge Hawthorne's schedule and had been struggling with gambling debts. Surveillance revealed that Morrison had been meeting regularly with known associates of the Torino organization, but his cooperation seemed to be motivated by fear rather than greed. "They threatened my family," Morrison told Agent Park during his interrogation. "They said if I didn't provide information about Judge Hawthorne's schedule and security arrangements, they would hurt my wife and children." Morrison's cooperation provided crucial intelligence about the conspiracy, but it also revealed that the corruption extended beyond the court system. The Torino organization had infiltrated multiple federal agencies and was operating a sophisticated intelligence network within law enforcement itself. Agent Santos learned that the conspiracy involved corrupt employees in the U.S. Marshals Service who provided information about judicial security arrangements, FBI personnel who leaked details about ongoing investigations, and even prosecutors who shared confidential information about grand jury proceedings. The scope of the corruption was staggering. The Torino organization had been systematically identifying and compromising federal employees for over 5 years, creating a network of informants that allowed them to stay ahead of law enforcement efforts. Agent Chen's financial investigation revealed that the organization had been using a complex money laundering operation to fund their corruption activities. They operated legitimate businesses that generated substantial profits, then used those profits to bribe or extort federal employees. This isn't just organized crime, Agent Santos realized. This is organized crime that has learned to corrupt the system from within. They're not just breaking laws, they're buying the people who enforce those laws. The investigation identified 17 federal employees who had been compromised by the Torino organization. Some had been bribed with money, others had been extorted through threats against their families, and several had been blackmailed with evidence of personal indiscretions. Judge Hawthorne's murder had been intended as the culmination of the corruption scheme. By framing her as corrupt and then killing her, the organization would demonstrate their ability to destroy even the most respected federal judges, sending a message to other judges that cooperation was preferable to destruction. Agent Park's investigation revealed that the Torino organization had been planning similar operations against 3 other federal judges who were presiding over cases that threatened their interests. The conspiracy was designed to systematically undermine the federal judicial system. The FBI's response was unprecedented in its scope. Director Collins authorized a joint task force involving the FBI's Public Corruption Unit, Internal Affairs Division, and Counterintelligence Division. The goal was to identify and arrest all compromised federal employees while building cases against the Torino organization's leadership. The arrests began simultaneously across 7 states on November 15, 2024. Vincent Torino and 14 members of his organization were charged with racketeering, conspiracy to commit murder, obstruction of justice, and corruption of federal officials. The 17 compromised federal employees were arrested on charges ranging from bribery and extortion to conspiracy to commit murder in the case of those who had assisted in planning Judge Hawthorne's death. Agent Santos testified at Vincent Torino's trial about the elaborate nature of the conspiracy and the threat it posed to the federal judicial system. This wasn't just about one case or one judge, she told the jury. This was an attack on the rule of law itself. The trial revealed disturbing details about how organized crime groups had evolved to combat federal law enforcement. Rather than simply trying to evade detection, they had learned to corrupt the system from within, turning federal employees into unwitting assets. Thomas Morrison, the court clerk who had been extorted into cooperating, testified about the psychological pressure applied by the organization. "They didn't just threaten to kill me," he told the court. "They threatened to make my family suffer slowly, and they convinced me they had the capability to carry out those threats." The investigation also revealed that Judge Hawthorne had been aware that something was wrong in the weeks before her death. She had noticed unusual activity around the courthouse and had requested enhanced security, but her requests had been ignored by compromised security personnel. Vincent Torino was convicted on all charges and sentenced to life in prison without parole. His conviction led to the dismantling of one of the most sophisticated organized crime operations in American history. The 17 compromised federal employees received sentences ranging from 5 to 25 years, depending on their level of cooperation and the severity of their crimes. Several testified against the Torino organization in exchange for reduced sentences. Agent Santos's investigation led to comprehensive reforms in federal judicial security and employee screening procedures. New protocols were established for detecting potential corruption and protecting federal employees from extortion attempts. The case also led to the creation of a new FBI unit specifically focused on protecting the integrity of the federal court system. The unit monitors potential threats against judges and court personnel while investigating any signs of corruption within the judicial branch. Dr. Patricia Hawthorne's legacy lived on through these reforms. Her murder had exposed a cancer within the federal system, but her death also catalyzed the changes necessary to prevent similar conspiracies from succeeding in the future. Agent Chen's financial investigation continued for months after the trial, eventually recovering over $50 million in assets that the Torino organization had acquired through their criminal activities. The recovered funds were used to compensate victims of their crimes and to fund enhanced security measures for federal courts. The psychological impact on federal employees was significant. Many judges and court personnel required counseling to deal with the knowledge that their colleagues had been compromised and that their own safety might be at risk. Agent Park's internal affairs investigation led to new employee assistance programs designed to help federal workers who were being threatened or extorted by criminal organizations. The programs provided both protection and support for employees who reported corruption attempts. 6 months after the trial concluded, Agent Santos received a letter from Judge Hawthorne's daughter thanking her for ensuring that justice was served. "My mother dedicated her life to upholding the law," the letter read. "Thank you for making sure that her death was not in vain." The Torino case remains a classified file in many respects, but it fundamentally changed how the FBI approaches the protection of federal officials and the investigation of sophisticated corruption schemes. In her final report, Agent Santos wrote, "Judge Hawthorne's murder was not just the killing of one person. It was an attack on the principle that justice is blind and cannot be bought. Our investigation proved that principle is worth defending, no matter the cost." The federal courthouse where Judge Hawthorne died now features a memorial plaque honoring her service and the principle of judicial integrity. The inscription reads, "In memory of those who serve justice without fear or favor." The emergency call came into the FBI's Human Trafficking Task Force at 2:45 a.m. on a Friday morning in December 2024. A 17-year-old girl named Maria Gonzalez had escaped from what she described as a house of horrors in Houston, Texas. and was calling from a gas station payphone with information about a massive human trafficking operation spanning multiple states. Special Agent Jennifer Walsh had been investigating human trafficking cases for 8 years, but Maria's story was unlike anything she had encountered. The teenager described a sophisticated operation that moved victims along a carefully planned route from the Mexican border through Texas, New Mexico, Colorado, and into Chicago, with safe houses and corrupt officials coordinating each step of the journey. Agent Walsh immediately dispatched a crisis intervention team to the Houston gas station while beginning to coordinate with field offices along the route Maria had described. What they would discover was a criminal enterprise that treated human beings as merchandise, moving them through a pipeline of exploitation that generated millions of dollars in profit. Maria Gonzalez had been kidnapped from her hometown in Guadalajara, Mexico, 18 months earlier. She had been promised work as a housekeeper in the United States, but instead found herself trapped in a network of forced labor and sexual exploitation that moved victims like cargo along predetermined routes. "They call it the pipeline," Maria told Agent Walsh during her initial interview. "Every few weeks they move us to different cities. They said if we tried to escape, they would kill our families back home. They had photographs of our homes, our parents, our siblings." Agent Walsh recognized the sophisticated nature of the operation immediately. This wasn't a local trafficking ring. It was an international criminal enterprise with the organizational structure and resources of a major corporation. The task force established a command center in Houston while deploying teams to investigate the safe houses Maria had described. What they found exceeded their worst expectations: a network of residential properties that had been converted into prisons, complete with reinforced doors, barred windows, and surveillance systems. FBI Special Agent Carlos Rodriguez, who specialized in organized crime investigations, analyzed the financial structure of the trafficking operation. Bank records revealed a complex money laundering scheme involving shell companies, fake charities, and legitimate businesses that served as fronts for the criminal activity. "This organization is generating approximately $20 million per year," Rodriguez told the task force. "They're moving an estimated 500 victims through the pipeline annually, and they've been operating for at least 5 years. The investigation revealed that the trafficking network was controlled by a man known only as El Jefe, the boss. Maria had never seen him, but she had overheard conversations suggesting that he was an American citizen with extensive connections to both Mexican cartels and corrupt officials in multiple U.S. states. Agent Walsh worked with FBI behavioral analysts to develop a profile of El Jefe based on the operational structure of the trafficking network. The sophistication of the operation suggested someone with advanced education, business experience, and detailed knowledge of law enforcement procedures. "This isn't someone who stumbled into trafficking," Agent Walsh explained to the task force. "This is someone who designed a criminal enterprise from the ground up, treating human trafficking like a business problem to be solved through logistics and organization." The breakthrough in identifying El Jefe came when Agent Rodriguez traced the money laundering operation to a series of real estate investments in Colorado. The properties were owned by various shell companies, but they all traced back to a single individual: David Harrison, a 45-year-old former federal immigration officer. Harrison had worked for Immigration and Customs Enforcement for 12 years before leaving federal service in 2018. His personnel file revealed that he had been investigated for suspicious activity, but had resigned before any charges were filed. "He knows our procedures," Agent Walsh realized. "He knows how we investigate trafficking cases, what evidence we look for, and how to avoid detection. He's been using his federal law enforcement experience to stay ahead of us." The surveillance of David Harrison revealed a man living an outwardly respectable life in Denver, Colorado. He operated a consulting business that advised companies on immigration compliance, served on the board of a local charity, and was married with 2 young children. But FBI technical surveillance revealed that Harrison was using encrypted communications to coordinate the trafficking operation. He never personally visited the safe houses or interacted directly with victims, instead managing the network through a series of lieutenants who believed they were working for different organizations. Agent Walsh's team discovered that Harrison had compartmentalized the operation so thoroughly that most participants didn't understand the full scope of the criminal enterprise. Transport drivers thought they were moving undocumented immigrants for humanitarian reasons. Safe house operators believed they were providing temporary shelter for asylum seekers. The psychological manipulation was sophisticated and deliberate. Harrison had recruited participants who genuinely believed they were helping vulnerable people, making it extremely difficult for law enforcement to identify the criminal nature of their activities. Maria Gonzalez provided crucial intelligence about the operation's schedule and procedures. Victims were moved every 3 weeks according to a predetermined calendar, with transportation coordinated through coded messages on social media platforms. "They treated us like inventory," Maria told Agent Walsh. "They had numbers for all of us, and they tracked our movements on spreadsheets. If someone got sick or tried to resist, they would disappear, and we never saw them again." The task force identified 14 safe houses along the pipeline route, each housing between 10 and 20 victims at any given time. The properties were registered to different shell companies, but surveillance revealed they all followed identical security protocols. Agent Rodriguez's financial investigation revealed that Harrison had been laundering money through a network of businesses that appeared to be legitimate community services. A chain of laundromats, several small restaurants, and multiple cleaning services were all fronts for the trafficking operation. The challenge for law enforcement was conducting simultaneous raids on 14 locations across 5 states, while ensuring the safety of an estimated 200-plus victims who were being held against their will. Many of the victims didn't speak English and had been conditioned to fear law enforcement. Agent Walsh coordinated with victim services specialists and translators to develop protocols for safely extracting victims during the raids. Each team included social workers and medical personnel trained in trauma response for trafficking survivors. The raids were scheduled for 6 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, timed to occur when Harrison's operation would be conducting their routine victim count and location verification procedures. The simultaneous timing was crucial to prevent Harrison from destroying evidence or moving victims to alternate locations. Agent Walsh led the raid on the primary safe house in Houston, where Maria had been held. The team found 23 victims, including 12 minors, living in deplorable conditions. The house had been modified with locks on the outside of bedroom doors and surveillance cameras monitoring every room. The raids across all 14 locations resulted in the rescue of 187 victims and the arrest of 34 individuals involved in operating the trafficking network. But David Harrison was not among those arrested. He had vanished from his Denver home hours before the raids began. The investigation revealed that Harrison had been monitoring law enforcement communications and had become aware that Maria had escaped and was cooperating with authorities. He had activated an escape plan that included false identity documents and offshore financial accounts. Agent Walsh's team worked with international law enforcement agencies to track Harrison's movements. Financial records showed large withdrawals from offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, and immigration records indicated he had traveled to several countries without extradition treaties with the United States. The manhunt for David Harrison involved coordination with Interpol and law enforcement agencies in over 20 countries. The FBI offered a $5 million reward for information leading to his capture, making him one of the most wanted fugitives in the world. Meanwhile, the rescued victims required extensive medical care and psychological support. Many had been held in captivity for years and suffered from severe trauma, malnutrition, and various health problems resulting from their exploitation. Maria Gonzalez became a key witness in the prosecution of the trafficking network's operators. Her testimony revealed the full scope of the psychological and physical abuse that victims endured, as well as the systematic methods used to maintain control over them. They told us that if we ever escaped, the police would arrest us and send us back to Mexico, where the cartels would kill our families, Maria testified. They convinced us that we were criminals and that nobody would help us. The trial of the trafficking network operators resulted in convictions for all 34 defendants. The sentences ranged from 15 years to life in prison, depending on each individual's role in the operation and level of cooperation with authorities. Agent Rodriguez's financial investigation led to the seizure of over $50 million in assets connected to the trafficking operation. The money was used to provide long-term support services for the rescued victims and to fund enhanced anti-trafficking efforts. 6 months after the initial raids, David Harrison was captured by Mexican authorities in Cancun, where he had been living under a false identity. His extradition to the United States took 8 months due to legal challenges, but he was eventually returned to face trial. Harrison's trial revealed the full scope of his criminal enterprise and his systematic exploitation of his federal law enforcement background to evade detection. Prosecutors presented evidence that he had been planning the trafficking operation while still employed by ICE. David Harrison took an oath to protect and serve, the prosecutor told the jury during closing arguments. Instead, he used his knowledge and authority to create a criminal empire built on human suffering. Harrison was convicted on all charges, including conspiracy to commit human trafficking, money laundering, and racketeering. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Maria Gonzalez was granted asylum in the United States and entered a victim services program that provided education, job training, and psychological counseling. She eventually became an advocate for trafficking survivors and worked with the FBI to identify other potential trafficking operations. Agent Walsh's investigation led to significant changes in how federal agencies screen employees with access to sensitive immigration and law enforcement information. New protocols were established for monitoring former federal employees who might use their knowledge for criminal purposes. The case also resulted in enhanced cooperation between federal agencies and victim services organizations. New procedures were developed for identifying and assisting trafficking victims, recognizing that many victims initially appear to be willing participants due to psychological manipulation. The pipeline case, as it became known within the FBI, demonstrated the evolving sophistication of human trafficking operations and the need for equally sophisticated law enforcement responses. The investigation required coordination between multiple agencies, international partners, and community organizations. Agent Rodriguez's final report on the financial aspects of the case revealed that human trafficking had become one of the most profitable criminal enterprises in the world, generating billions of dollars annually for criminal organizations with the organizational skills to operate across international borders. The 14 safe houses used in the trafficking operation were converted into community centers and victim services facilities, ensuring that the locations once used for exploitation would instead serve to help survivors rebuild their lives. 2 years after the case concluded, Agent Walsh received a letter from Maria Gonzalez, who had graduated from high school and was preparing to attend college. "You gave me back my life," the letter read. "Now I want to use that life to help others who are still trapped." The investigation into the pipeline officially closed with Harrison's conviction, but it led to ongoing efforts to identify and dismantle similar trafficking networks. The case file became a training resource for federal agents investigating complex human trafficking operations. In her final case summary, Agent Walsh wrote, "Human trafficking is modern slavery, and like slavery, it can only exist when society chooses to look the other way. Our job is to make sure that America never stops looking, never stops searching, and never stops fighting for those who cannot fight for themselves." The success of the pipeline investigation led to the creation of a permanent multi-agency task force dedicated to investigating sophisticated human trafficking operations. The task force continues to work with international partners to identify and rescue victims of trafficking while bringing their exploiters to justice. David Harrison's conviction sent a clear message to other potential traffickers. Law enforcement would pursue them across international borders and utilize every available resource to bring them to justice. The case established precedents for prosecuting complex trafficking operations and for providing comprehensive services to survivors. The 187 victims rescued during the pipeline raids received various forms of assistance, including immigration relief, medical care, education, job training, and psychological counseling. Many remained in the United States under special visa programs for trafficking survivors, while others chose to return to their home countries with support from international aid organizations. The pipeline case remains one of the FBI's most significant human trafficking investigations and continues to serve as a model for how law enforcement agencies can work together to combat sophisticated criminal enterprises that operate across multiple jurisdictions and international borders. The text message that arrived on FBI Financial Crimes Specialist Agent Emily Chen's personal phone at 11:47 p.m. on a Sunday night in January 2025 contained only 8 words. Your retirement account just made you rich. Check it. Agent Chen, who had been tracking sophisticated money laundering operations for the Bureau's Financial Crimes section for 7 years, immediately knew something was wrong. She lived modestly on her federal salary and had never engaged in any high-risk investments that could generate sudden wealth. When Chen logged into her retirement account, she discovered that her balance had inexplicably increased by $2.3 million overnight. The funds had been deposited through a series of complex transfers involving cryptocurrency exchanges, offshore banks, and shell companies. Someone with extraordinary technical capabilities had turned her into an unwilling participant in what appeared to be a massive money laundering scheme. Agent Chen immediately contacted FBI financial intelligence analyst Dr. Marcus Williams, her longtime partner in investigating complex financial crimes. Dr. Williams had a PhD in forensic accounting and specialized in tracking the movement of illicit funds through the international banking system. Emily, this isn't random, Dr. Williams told her after analyzing the transaction patterns. Someone specifically chose your account for this deposit. They know who you are, what you do, and they're sending you a message. The implications were terrifying. Agent Chen had been investigating a money laundering network known as the Digital Laundromat for 18 months. The operation used sophisticated artificial intelligence algorithms to move billions of dollars in criminal proceeds through thousands of legitimate financial accounts belonging to unsuspecting Americans. The Digital Laundromat wasn't just laundering money, it was using ordinary citizens' financial accounts as temporary repositories for criminal funds, making the money appear to belong to legitimate account holders before moving it to its final destinations. The victims never knew their accounts had been compromised because the funds were deposited and withdrawn within hours. Agent Chen's personal involvement in the case created an unprecedented situation. She had become both investigator and victim, with someone deliberately targeting her to demonstrate the reach and sophistication of the criminal network she was trying to dismantle. FBI Assistant Director Karen Morrison convened an emergency task force to address the breach. The meeting included representatives from the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, FinCEN, the Securities and Exchange Commission, the Internal Revenue Service, and the Treasury Department's Office of Foreign Assets Control. This is more than a criminal investigation, Assistant Director Morrison told the assembled team. This is an attack on the integrity of the American financial system. If criminals can manipulate any bank account at will, public confidence in our banking system could collapse. Dr. Williams's analysis revealed that the Digital Laundromat had been operating for at least 3 years and had processed an estimated $15 billion in criminal proceeds. The operation used advanced artificial intelligence to identify optimal accounts for temporary fund placement based on factors like account history, transaction patterns, and the likelihood of detection. The criminal network had access to banking systems, credit reporting agencies, investment platforms, and even government databases. They could manipulate account balances, create false transaction histories, and generate legitimate-looking documentation for any financial activity. Agent Chen worked with FBI Cyber Division specialists to trace the source of the unauthorized access to her retirement account. What they discovered was that her personal financial information had been accessed through a breach at a major credit reporting agency that had occurred 2 years earlier but had never been publicly disclosed. They've been inside the financial system for years, Agent Chen realized. Every data breach, every hack, every stolen identity, they've been collecting that information and using it to build a map of American financial accounts. The investigation revealed that the digital laundromat was controlled by an international criminal syndicate with connections to organized crime groups, terrorist organizations, and corrupt government officials around the world. They weren't just laundering money. They were providing financial services to the global criminal underground. FBI Special Agent Rodriguez, who specialized in international organized crime, identified patterns in the money movement that suggested the operation was based somewhere in Eastern Europe, but had operational cells in the United States, Asia, and South America. This isn't just about moving dirty money, Rodriguez explained to the task force. They're creating a shadow financial system that operates parallel to the legitimate banking network. They can move money faster and more securely than traditional banks. The breakthrough in the investigation came when Dr. Williams noticed an anomaly in the artificial intelligence algorithms used by the digital laundromat. The code contained a specific programming signature that matched software developed by an American fintech company called Quantum Financial Solutions. Quantum Financial Solutions was a legitimate technology company that developed AI-powered financial management software for banks and investment firms. The company's founder and CEO, Dr. Jonathan Mitchell, was a respected figure in the financial technology industry with no known criminal connections. Agent Chen's investigation into Dr. Mitchell revealed a brilliant computer scientist who had developed revolutionary algorithms for analyzing and predicting financial market behavior. His software was used by dozens of major financial institutions and had access to vast amounts of sensitive financial data. But when FBI agents approached Quantum Financial Solutions for a voluntary interview, they discovered that Dr. Mitchell had disappeared 3 weeks earlier. His employees believed he was attending a technology conference in Switzerland, but there was no record of him leaving the country. The investigation into Dr. Mitchell's disappearance revealed that he had been under significant financial pressure despite his company's success. He owed approximately $50 million to various creditors after a series of failed personal investments, and his company was facing bankruptcy due to a lawsuit from a competitor. Agent Chen suspected that Dr. Mitchell had been approached by the international criminal syndicate and coerced into providing access to his financial algorithms. The timing of his disappearance coincided with a significant escalation in the digital laundromat's activities. FBI technical specialists analyzing Quantum Financial's servers discovered that someone had been using the company's legitimate banking connections to access financial networks around the world. The criminal syndicate had essentially hijacked a legal fintech company to create their money laundering infrastructure. The search for Dr. Mitchell led FBI agents to a private airport outside Las Vegas, where surveillance footage showed him boarding a private jet 3 weeks earlier. The flight plan indicated the aircraft was heading to the Cayman Islands, a known haven for money laundering operations. Agent Chen coordinated with international law enforcement agencies to track Dr. Mitchell's movements through the Caribbean banking system. Financial records revealed that he had been moving large sums of money through multiple offshore accounts, apparently under duress from his criminal associates. The investigation took a dramatic turn when Dr. Mitchell contacted the FBI from an undisclosed location. He revealed that he was being held against his will by the criminal syndicate, and forced to maintain the digital laundromat's operations under threat of death. "They have my family," Dr. Mitchell told Agent Chen during a secure phone call. "They said if I don't keep the system running, they'll kill my wife and children. I never wanted to be involved in money laundering, but they gave me no choice." Dr. Mitchell provided crucial intelligence about the digital laundromat's structure and operations. The criminal syndicate was led by a man known only as the Architect, who had recruited financial experts from around the world to build and maintain the money laundering network. The Architect's identity remained a mystery, but Dr. Mitchell described him as an American with extensive knowledge of international banking regulations and advanced computer programming skills. He operated the syndicate like a legitimate business, with departments for technology, operations, security, and client services. Agent Chen realized that the Architect was likely someone with a background in federal financial regulation or law enforcement, someone who understood both the technical aspects of money laundering and the investigative techniques used to detect it. The FBI's investigation identified dozens of financial institutions that had been compromised by the digital laundromat. The criminal network had infiltrated banks, credit unions, investment firms, and even cryptocurrency exchanges across multiple countries. Dr. Williams's forensic analysis revealed that the digital laundromat had processed transactions for drug cartels, terrorist organizations, human trafficking rings, and corrupt government officials. They had become the primary financial infrastructure for international organized crime. The challenge for law enforcement was dismantling a money laundering network that existed primarily in cyberspace and involved financial institutions in dozens of countries with different banking regulations and law enforcement cooperation agreements. Agent Chen developed a strategy to use Dr. Mitchell's cooperation to plant tracking software within the digital laundromat systems. The software would allow the FBI to monitor money movements in real time and identify the network's clients and ultimate beneficiaries. The operation required coordination with financial intelligence units in over 20 countries. Each participating nation agreed to monitor suspicious transactions identified by the FBI's tracking software and to freeze accounts connected to the money laundering network. The simultaneous global operation began at midnight GMT on February 15, 2025. Law enforcement agencies around the world executed coordinated actions to freeze accounts, seize assets, and arrest individuals connected to the digital laundromat. The operation resulted in the seizure of over $8 billion in criminal proceeds and the arrest of 127 individuals in 14 countries. But the Architect remained elusive, apparently having anticipated the law enforcement action and activated escape protocols. Dr. Mitchell was rescued by FBI agents from a safe house in the Bahamas, where he had been held captive for over 2 months. His family was found unharmed at another location and placed in protective custody while the investigation continued. The dismantling of the digital laundromat revealed the sophisticated nature of modern money laundering operations and the vulnerability of the global financial system to cyber-enabled crime. The case led to significant reforms in banking security and international cooperation on financial crimes. Agent Chen's personal involvement in the case became a symbol of how financial crimes could affect anyone, even those dedicated to fighting such crimes. Her retirement account was eventually restored to its original balance, and the unauthorized funds were traced to their criminal sources. The investigation into the Architect's identity continued for months after the operation concluded. Financial analysis suggested that he had escaped with approximately $500 million in criminal proceeds and was likely planning to establish a new money laundering network. 6 months after the global operation, Agent Chen received another text message on her personal phone. "Round 1 goes to you, looking forward to round 2. The message was traced to a server in Southeast Asia, but the Architect's true location remained unknown. The digital laundromat case fundamentally changed how law enforcement agencies approach financial crimes in the digital age. It demonstrated that money laundering had evolved from simple cash-based operations to sophisticated networks that could manipulate the global financial system at will. Dr. Williams's final report on the financial analysis identified artificial intelligence as both a powerful tool for detecting money laundering and a dangerous weapon in the hands of criminals. The technology that had enabled the digital laundromat's success was now being used to prevent similar operations. Agent Chen was promoted to Senior Financial Crimes Specialist and assigned to lead a new FBI unit focused on AI-enabled financial crimes. Her personal experience as a victim of the digital laundromat provided unique insights into how criminals were exploiting ordinary Americans' financial accounts. The rescued victims of the digital laundromat included thousands of Americans whose accounts had been temporarily compromised without their knowledge. Many required extensive assistance to restore their credit histories and financial records after being unwitting participants in money laundering schemes. Dr. Mitchell was placed in the Witness Protection Program after his cooperation led to the dismantling of the money laundering network. His technology company was restructured with enhanced security protocols and continued to provide legitimate financial services under new management. The case files for the digital laundromat investigation remain partially classified, but the operation led to new international agreements on combating cyber-enabled financial crimes and enhanced cooperation between financial intelligence units worldwide. In her final case report, Agent Chen wrote, "The digital laundromat showed us that in the age of artificial intelligence and global connectivity, the line between victim and criminal can be erased with a few keystrokes. Our job is to ensure that technology serves justice, not crime." The legacy of the digital laundromat case continues to influence how law enforcement agencies investigate financial crimes in the digital age. The techniques developed during the investigation have been used to dismantle dozens of similar operations and have prevented billions of dollars in criminal proceeds from entering the legitimate financial system. 2 years after the case concluded, Agent Chen received a final message from Dr. Mitchell. "Thank you for giving me back my life and my family. The technology we created to fight crime will never be used to enable it again." His new financial security software had become the industry standard for detecting AI-enabled money laundering operations.